What I think is interesting about this tarot card or this archetype is within the book that we're currently doing. I feel like this is the archetype that really applies to her. So just keep that in mind and see if you agree at the end. So the tower has no exit, only some windows that look outward. The meeting, La Maison do, is a hospital or hospice. The only way to exit it is by the intervention of divine energy, the lightning, the numinous force emanating from God. The magical powers are underscored by the shower of multicolored balls. And yet, there is no presence of the magician. Oh, now I've lost it. Hang on. You see anything on the screen?
Not yet. Not yet.
I'm going to stop the share and try resharing it.
Okay. No problem. I can restart the recording as well. Hi, Angelique and Fabio, by the way. We have a little bit of a, okay. It's still blank, but
yeah. Well,
oh, there you go. There you go. Now put it that, you're clicking on a blank slide.
Yeah, maybe
your
that's
cursor's on a blank
that's
slide.
not, I'm going to do it in the small one. I don't know.
Okay,
why
sure, no problem.
Okay. So there is, and yet there's no presence of like the magician or the emperor or the pope with his crosier. So they're doubly fortunate to be liberated from an enforced carceration by a power from beyond. To be struck by lightning means symbolically to be touched by the hand of God, to mark one as someone as deserving special attention. The tower being cracked open by a bolt of lightning is like the hard outer shell of a nut being cracked open to release new life. Presumably, these two are being cracked open to release two inner living kernels to take root in the soil. That they fall from the heights to the earth and that this is a release shows the psychic imbalance they must have been in before. The falling figures may believe their universe is being destroyed, but deep in the unconscious, their body reflects the release by the smile on their faces and the somersaults their bodies perform. This reminds us of the hangman, who, when inverted, is actually dancing a jig. The tower, as a rigid system, may be useful from time to time to protect us from the awakenings that would accompany being wholly open. But after a time, it becomes a prison. When we are no longer free to move and change with the moment, we have lost contact with nature, with our center, with our core. At this point, we need to be brought down to earth. This may occur in the form of a spiritual illness, a change of fortune, or other cataclysmic event. All important psychic changes are resisted and are experienced as acts of violence. We resist change. If a rigid position is maintained, breakdown may occur. The two humans here are in a state of shock, but like all instinctive animals, they seek to reconnect to nature. They reach out for the green plants. Note too, the tower has not been destroyed, but the crown has been knocked asunder so that it is now open to illumination from above. In the card before, the two subhuman creatures were unaware of their animal parts or their connection to the devil's machinations. They had to turn around to see them, but instead they built a construct, a towering philosophy that was rigid and resulted in an unchanging pattern. In the Tower of Destruction, they have covered their true identity with the uniform of civilization, where before they were slaves to their own devilish instinct, now they are prisoners of their equally devilish intellect. Their intellectual pride has driven them too high, and therefore they must fall. According to Jung, lightning signifies a sudden, unexpected, and overpowering change of psychic condition. The fruits of this experience will be seen in the next cards, the star, the moon, and the sun, all of which are forms of heavenly illumination. But it may be years before they can see the light and the lightning. This experience may transcend all human logic and moralizing, but deep in the unconscious, the seed has been awakened. The point of the cards and the recognition of the archetype is to feel the meaning of any happening. To do this, it may help to relate them to the other cards in the same vertical row. For example, in this row, the hermit demonstrates the friar's flowing mobility and a look of open inquiry. By being alive to the sights and sounds of his environment, he allows the earth and nature to permeate him. His lantern is not focused in one direction, but rather casts diffuse illumination in several directions at once. How different is this form from someone locked in a concrete tower where nothing gets in or out? The Popus is a symbol of patience, receptivity, and obedience to true spirit. She sits quietly, rarely initiating conversation, and then only after first sensing the other's mood. The liveness we seek comes back to connecting with our feelings and personifying our relations with the world around us to deepen our connection, to live in the world of active imagination. I've been amazed by the depth and breadth of the archetypes in the tarot cards. It offers an easy entrance for active imagination practices that would enliven and deepen our connection to the world. This journey is one of relatedness and feeling more than towers of thought and systems of thinking. The Tower of Destruction is the perfect reminder of this. That's today's.
Well, great. You know, it's the image of the tower, you know, is so important, you know, in the, in dreams. I mean, I remember, Tim, your dream where you go up to the top of the tower and there's 4 women in the highest room. And then there was, Diane, that was where the woman who had knowledge of the body, you descended with her to get what looked like a wedding dress or something, you know, some kind of a special dress. And it's you know, it's in hexagram 20 in the I Ching is the tower. And that is, you know, it's basically, you know, what Jung always said is the distance from the head, from the realization of a revelation, and the heart is 20 years. You know, that's how far away the head is from the heart. You know, it takes that tower to get the clarity involved. I mean, this thing we're doing really, you know, is all about clarity. You know, I mean, I think that was what Jung it really offers is clarity, you know, and that comes from getting a wider view by being up above. You know, there's such a strange when we're reading all of these little things. I mean, you can, you know, it's just to see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower. All these little dreams. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. You know, the idea is of these dreams, there's just a strange feeling that we are animals that were in zoos all our life. And now suddenly we're going to be released from the zoo cage that we've been on our life, and we're going to go back to our native soil. And we're going to live there as we should have lived all along, you know, like any animal that was caged up, you know. And the other thing is the wonderful interplay from the most primordial, primitive instinctive aspect of the body and the cosmos. You know, I mean, it doesn't seem that the dreams overweight the cosmos. If they overweight anything, it's the primordial aspect of instinctive life. Well, anyway, we'll just continue with her dreams. I was just going through them. You know, we're going to go through them in sort of a rapid way, but I just think it's important, and I think we have people here that can do that, that listen to every word closely, because you know, every word is important. Well, you know, we just had finished with the dreams of the where she goes and sees the three churches. She sees the ugly shrine, she sees the great cathedral, which she can't go in because she doesn't have a proper hat. And then she sees the the one which the lay wise old woman, that she's not religious, she doesn't belong to a religious order, opens the double gates and shows her a forest. Now, see, these are the three realms of religious experience. You know, one, the ugly shrine, is the conventional, which is the you know, sort of the is the it's just in primitive containment with no questions asked. The great cathedral is one of a conscious, not an unconscious, identification with some doctrine or system that is not your own. You know, this is the one the theologians would join, you know. And then the individual, the one, is the mystery of the unique individual experience. And I think this is the one of just relearning. I mean, the idea is just this strange, you know, I think if you were the psyche, and you could take these highly trained specialists that had been living in zoos all their life, and then bring them back in to be your engineers as far as evolving the God image, you've got quite a specimen there. But are they going to be able to help you? Can you give them the clarity, the wider view that is required? Anyway, so the next dream she had is she's making a ground plan. She's making a ground plan, perhaps of a house or garden, in which several pieces have to be fitted into a given space. And a voice says, they will go in quite well, only first it is necessary to draw the circle, showing the points of the compass to give one orientation. And she looks for something with which to draw the circle. Okay, so she's making this ground plan, perhaps of a house or a garden. And there are, you know, this is the idea. My wife does this a lot. She buys the furniture first and finds the room later. You know, I mean, the idea is, look at the room, and then how do things fit in the room? You know, you don't, but she cannot do this until she has orienting points. And this is came up in a wonderful dream that Jung mentions, and that this person finds stones that were flat steps. He tried to lift the force. There were four of them, and he tries to lift them. But in doing so, he discovered that these stones were the pedestals of four statues of gods that were buried upside down in the earth. They dug them up and arranged them about them so that he was standing in the middle of them. And suddenly they leaned towards one another until their heads touched, forming something like a tent over me. And he fell to the ground and said, "Fall upon me if you must, I am tired." And then he saw that beyond, encircling the four gods, a ring of flame had formed. After a time, he got up from the ground and overthrew the statues of gods. Where they fell, 4 trees shot up, and at that blue flames leapt up from the ring of fire and began to burn the foliage of the trees. Seeing this, I said, "This must stop. I must go into the fire myself so that the leaves shall not be burned." He stepped into the fire, the trees vanished, the fiery ring drew together to one immense blue flame that carried him away from the earth. Okay, so anyway, this is just a fragment of a very long series of dreams like this. And what Jung says is that the as the 4 points in physical space helped us to orient, there are 4 points in psychic space that we need to have to orient, and she needs to draw those in her before she can ever fit the parts of her psyche into a circle. So the ground plan refers to the basic plan of the totality of her personality. It's not just parts. Everything must be fitted, and the voice says that they will go in quite well if she draws the 4 points. And this was the remark that several pieces had to be fitted into a given space, into the given confines. And the problem was how to arrange her different trends and drives, her different part souls into a given psychological space. Now, that they will go in quite well as a reassurance on the part of the unconscious that the polarities and opposites may not be too great to make a whole. In other words, they'll go in quite well. You know, this is very interesting. I think too that all of these things that are forming within us are incredibly profound. They are incredibly seem to have a deep basis behind them, and yet their companion is the thinness of the ego that forgets it 5 minutes after they hear it. You know, so we seem to be pretty much the junior partner in a divine drama that's going on inside of us, you know, and we return to it every once in a while, you know, and it's continuing to build and work. But this thing over here is just, yeah, how airy is it? You know, I mean, it's very airy, but this divine drama in the middle is incredible. You know, this one
you describe it so well. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah,
that's a good description. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ava. Well, you know, Edinger said that in any analysis, he says, "Am I talking to a complex? Am I talking to your shadow? Shadow? Am I talking to your bored, dry ego? Am I talking to the self?" I mean, and these things shift. He saw it. He said they would shift in the person. The person's totally unaware of what's going on while it happens. Anyway, so this she's creating a psychological space, okay, and so that I mean the idea here of what he later calls the fact that you have to have the totality has to be a discriminated totality. It cannot just be a totality. It needs to be one that is discriminated. See, now this is the importance that consciousness provides to nature. Nature can easily provide the images of the totality, you know, but it needs to have them oriented in a psychic space with the with discrimination, that they need to fit in. And then, because otherwise they're not going to make any, they're not going to be able to be transformational if we're not aware of them. You know, at least we have to be conscious of them. So the house and garden are frequent symbols of a temenos, or a protective circle. They both have feminine connotations. The house is the symbol of the creative womb of the Great Mother. The garden is the hortus conclusus. Virgin Mary was a hortus conclusus of wholeness and individuation. So the image of the garden, which comes up so often, you know, in our dreams, is this also this temenos of this enclosed space. I mean, just here's some, and you know, it's often what Joseph Campbell said is that the feminine in us needs a circumscribed space, and the job of the masculine members of any clan or tribe was to protect the perimeter, so that the work of creation and nurturing can go on in the middle. You know, so this is kind of the idea that this is not going to be happening even us unless the circle is drawn. And it shows the points on the horizon, gives orientation, automatically creates its own center. And in this circle with the 4 points, we have another example of mandala symbolism. And what struck her was it wasn't the ground plan itself, which was subdivided into the 4 space or arranged as a circle. What happened was she needed orientation. She needed 4 points. And the circle represents a cosmic orientation because of its reference to the 4 points of the compass. It's hence both the horizon and the universe. And here her spontaneous feeling correspond to the general symbolism of the mandala as a psychic center of the personality, not to be identified with the ego. So what was happening here is you'll see that gradually she's starting to get the hint, and this is going to come up even more starkly in a second, that something is moving in her, and it's not her ego. Something is moving, but it's not my ego. So the self is this ground plan represents the. Now here's what I thought it was beautiful. The ground plan shows the limits of ego, the limits of the empirical personality, and the squared circle gives this higher plane of orientation, which transcends our power of comprehension. So without the navigational compass showing the 4 points of the horizon, the construct of the house cannot be properly constructed. It needs to be constructed against the background of the ordering archetype of wholeness, this discriminating aspect. So what he says is essentially an intuitive construct that the empirical personality has to, and apparently is able to, put right. So there is an intuitive construct forming in her, and her empirical personality must and is apparently able to put it right. But she needs the compass. She needs orienting points. The orienting points you would think would be her. She is thinking with feeling as her inferior function. And then she's also sensate with intuitive being a lesser. So now the ground plan and the compass are identical. They're ideally identical when all the part souls have been properly fitted. symbolized by the circle with its own center. Once the house is constructed in its fullest sense, it will coincide with the circle. She felt this to be her own house, and she derived immense satisfaction from having found it, having it come into her. Now, this reminds me too of Diane, of your dream of that wonderful place where you thought you were a guest, and they said, "No, this is yours." You know, it was this wonderful kind of a palace. Am I a guest here? No, this is yours. Now, this is going to come up in her dream in a second here. Hi, we're just starting KM on the a dream about the her having to draw a ground plan for a garden. So so what is happening is the final aim is of a conscious and discriminated totality where depth and surface have mixed. Surface without depth. You know, it's this idea of substance and meaning. You know, meaning totality with or substance, which is totality, without meaning is not really complete, and meaning particular without substance is completely nonsensical. I mean, this is the idea of the what Jung said in the last session was that spirit is a clever trickster. You know, it sounds so delicious, and yet unless it is combined with the substance of the earth and with our nature and with our body, as he says, the distance from the head to the heart is 20 to 40 years. So until that spiritual aspect has found root in the heart and the body, it's worthless. So it's just a strange mixture of the substance and meaning. So, but to get meaning, you need orientation, and to have the orientation mean anything, you need to have earth, or a garden, or a house. Okay, then here's a series of short dreams, but they show a great progression. She's moved into a new room, but the things in the room are so awkwardly low that she has to stoop low to get at them. So now the move here, she's saying over and over again, what is really is impressing her so much is something in her is moving. Remember, before she was a stony person, she was fixed in place, and the winds buffeted her like they would a stony mountain, you know, and now something is moving. And you're going to see some, this is, we're going to go through about the 6th week of an analysis, and it's amazing what has changed. So the move is always a transitus. You know, any analysis is a transitus. I mean, this is the idea of the Via Dolorosa, you know, this idea of Christ carrying the cross is a famous transitus. It's sort of an analysis. You know, the way forward, Jung always said, is through sorrow and loss and grief, and that's the only way. This is the way that you shorten the 20 to 40 year distance between the head and the heart, is through the quick way. The quick way to do it is through a depression or a great loss. Then suddenly what was in the head before, in your inflated state, now suddenly your priorities have changed, and you realize, like they say in AA, that you know one sober drunk needs another sober drunk, like a man lost at sea needs a lifeboat. I mean, it's this point where you've hit the rock bottom, and now you can see what's essential and absolutely necessary to your existence. And you know for the first time its incredible, essential importance in you. So that's the idea of this transit, just moving into a new room, but everything is so low. So is everything too low, or is she too high? You know, but it just shows problematical. You know, these dreams often will oscillate to train between great hope and the banal, or great hope and something horrible. You know, but the idea is they oscillate, but they go back and forth like this. So now here's the next dream. It's again showing the problems that the psyche. You know, we were talking about this yesterday. This strange relationship between Kairos time and chronological time. You know, there is no time in the eternal outside of time, and yet it develops divine dramas with beginnings, middles, and ends, with time aspects with it, and it flips it into the time being and says, here, this is written how, so you will understand it. There is movement here, you know, and it's just very interesting about this. But the colleague of mine, this is another dream, who was a stammerer, has called her on the telephone, but owing to the badness of the line and his stammer, she can't understand a word he's saying. You know, so now this Gerhard Adler, is saying the precariousness of the link with the unconscious, with the unconscious, who's symbolized by the stammerer, the animus figure, and the difficulty of the animus making himself understood by us. Is it he that's the problem, or is it us? You know, Jung was always asked, why are dreams so obscure? He says, they're not obscure. They just speak a language that is so ancient that we don't understand it anymore. And the language that's so ancient is symbolic thinking. We are all directed thinking people, you know, so we don't think symbolically anymore, you know, so that's the idea where, you know, Barbara Hannah's animus told her this. He had this similar problem. He didn't know how to communicate with her. And he says, and finally he said in frustration, he says, your world is just as strange to me as mine is to yours. You know, you know, it's this idea of this strange energy that wanted to become alive in rocks that wanted to become alive are suddenly puzzled by the consciousness of those time beings, which they're now trying to incarnate in, you know. And by the way, they're totally, their willfulness is just a whirlwind that it's very difficult for them to deal with. How do I, this animus figure, deal with this whirlwind of a woman here who has so much willfulness in her ego that she can't stop for a second to ponder the images I send, you know, and the fact that she devalues them. They're not important. What's important is in my own personal sphere, you know. So that's this idea of the stammerer, the bad telephone line, and nothing is communicated. Now, this is the next dream. We're going to go through some of these fairly quickly. There's a couple that we'll dwell on. She finds herself at a bridge that crosses a river. So it's a crossroads, but it's the crossroads of two routes. One is a river and one is a road. And but it's a strange, now this can be contrasted to any crossroads, usually where you make a decision. But if one route is a river and another is a road, it's a little bit different because they're not really commensurate. They're not the same, but they still are a crossroads. Now, she was an ornithologist, so she has a lot of birds come into her dreams. A flock of seagulls with black and white patches on the wingtips appear in the sky. Now these are all also winged thoughts. Okay, these are these winged revelations that fly in from the unconscious into the dream. Now what's interesting here is that they fly in not over the bridge or on the bridge, but under the bridge. But why would they fly under the bridge? It's too early for them to make nests, she says, expert on ornithology. So anyway, it's any crossroads, any intersection, two routes is always important. This there seems to be a variation of the theme of an impending decision, which is the normal one that we make at a crossroads, and something else. The river is a route, but what kind of route is it? It's the flowing stream of life. It is the water of life, and yet it's flowing. It's very interesting to contrast different bodies of water: a still pond, a lake, an ocean, a river, a waterfall. I mean, these are all similarly bringing us the water of life. The water of life that represents the unconscious is what the ego lacks. It's dry, it's desiccated. My soul tells me in active imagination, just in frustration, she says, what do you think life would be without me? Can you imagine it? I mean, all of the joy is gone. I mean, in other words, all that's left is autoerotic pleasure things that, you just got, you get like these rats and monkeys that just keep hitting the pleasure bar over and over, more. Well, what they really want, what the human really wants, is union with the depths. But since they're too lazy to do the work, they become they drink alcohol, they take drugs, they do sex, they devote themselves to their job, they do anything other than what is really being asked them. As well, what in the 20s and 30s of 1920s and 30s, Linda Fears Davids, who is a great analysis, said her women patients would say, well, I'll just have another child, that'll keep me busy for 4 or 5 years, and then I won't have to deal with all these issues. And Linda would tell them, she'd say, you need a moon child. You don't need a physical child. That's what's troubling you. So this is this idea of this impending decision. It's not an impending decision, it's something else, but it's what the river brings. And these birds are going under the bridge. Now, this is sort of a follow-up to everything in her new room is too low. There's an aspect that she's too high or something. Now, he just discusses the birds. They're creatures we see but don't control. This is so important in dreams. These creatures we see but don't control. They don't belong to us. Now, these were black and white birds, so they represent something that is connected with the opposites. Anything time you hear opposites, what you should always be thinking of is energy flow, that something is going to be flowing here. There's going to be energy produced, but through the opposites, through the poles. Now they fly in from the unconscious, and so they're personified contents of the unconscious, unlike a fish, or a deer that walks into the meadow from a meadow. They're a little bit different. So now it's too early for them to nest. Something is beginning, but it's not time yet. So this is sort of one of these things that are sort of it's a limbo dream. Now this has come up several times in a row here. They are migrant birds. They have loyalty to two homes. Okay. And so now this is was followed by this recurrent dream of her entire life. And by the way, I think this is a recurrent dream of everybody here too. I had another beautiful house as well as the one which I normally lived, but I wondered whether it was right to have one which I used so little, and whether the rent was paid. Okay. All right. Now, this is connected with the previous dreams of the ground plan and the new room. Now, the little used beautiful house. Okay. How often, Diane, do you use that house that belongs to you in the other dimension? It's little used. Is a prefiguration of the total personality, but we give no energy to it. I mean, there's no libido or too little given to it. And it is used only at the rare, exceptional moments of intuitive perception. That's what the beautiful house within that we're not paying any energy to. That's what that means. This is the house that we only use at the rare moments of intuitive perception. We often feel sometimes that we're an intruder in this house. Jung's first realization, which really separated him from Freud, was what she's learning here. I'm not the master in my own house. There is something moving in me, but it's not me. And so that's kind of what is happening here. So we also perceive this variant theme of dual parentage, the fact that we have a house here, which, or sometimes you're in your regular house or in your grandparents' house or your parents' house, and there is a room or a floor that you've never seen before. So what's this? Where did this come from? And this also has to do with that you have another parent in the beyond. Your parent here is not your true parent. This is what Spider Woman tells the two boys, son, go find your father. They need to find their true source, because we have two sources. One is the biological source. The other one is the source of our life. We have another mother who gave us our body, and she's the great mother. And she wasn't this poor little girl who probably had children too early, who all her children now look to as a divine goddess, and she can't really fulfill the role as much as she tries, But the image that was projected on her is not an untrue image that should be projected on. What it should be projected on is not another human being, but it has its roots somewhere else. So this psychological duality of twins, immortal and other immortal, the inner experience of the two aspects of the personality. This comes up in Christ Pantocrator, and also John the Baptist and Jesus. He's I must become lesser and you must become greater. Now what becomes lesser is the willfulness of the ego. Our twin is personality number 2. Now, what personality number 2 is the one who understands all these divine dramas and does not forget them, who they are with him always, these images. And he is the one who's the sort of this one who I know Kevin, I don't know if he's still here. Kevin saw walking past a store window, and he looks into the store window and his reflection looks back at him, but it's not his eyes. It's the eyes of this one who has understands completely everything, now, so personality number 2 is the one where the divine drama within us, the root, and the consciousness of it have now merged into one. They met at the middle plane where our source and the phenomenal world meet, surface and depths, and it now has created either the temple of wisdom or the philosopher's stone, or it is itself the divine child in us. So this personality number 2 would be the divine child or the philosopher's stone or the temple of wisdom, this middle being who is both conscious now, is incarnated in time and space, and yet is possesses all of this inner drama. So that's sort of the idea of the twins, the dual parentage, and the 2 houses, and that the idea of the house and the room, they're feminine symbols. The fact that she has 2 mothers here comes up. She has her regular house, which represents her problematic relations with her own mother, and she has this house within, which represents the transpersonal mother, who seems both beautiful and capable of giving orientation. We see her anticipation of the answer to her negative mother fixation. Okay, keep an eye on the time. Okay, well, I've not been going very fast. Here's the second one, or the next one. I want to let's just get a couple more. The one, I'll go through them fairly quickly, and we'll flesh them out next time. I did not get very far. The idea of she sees a man who is a half man, half formed, and she mentions Caliban. He's a figure in the Tempest. He was the son of Sycorax, who's the white goddess of death, or she's just related to the earth mother. And he sees, he has these sad animal eyes, and a man appears, and he's going to look for a woman who will take care of the creature. So this is her animus within her, I mean, is starting to form, but it's like in the alchemical emblems. First you see the dragon, then you see the stag, then you see the unicorn, and then you see the divine child. Right now it's in sort of its dragon state, and he was very impressed with the sad animal eyes. This was something that comes up a lot it came up. I'll just show you a couple ones. This one is really one that always has haunted me, and it is this one is from Christiana Morgan. She sees this face. She beheld it with eyes closed, and she besought it to open her eyes. This primitive man, and the face became very dark. Slowly the eyes opened. I beheld what no man was meant to see, so terrible, so full of woe and beauty. Now, this is what Jung described. The eyes of God are also full of woe and beauty, because they are nature. They're not us. That I cried out and could bear it no longer, and the eyes closed. This idea, I saw one asked to see the face of the Great Mother, and when she looked at me, I absolutely freaked, because she was so, this is sort of that look here. Now, is not that something that is stirs the heart in some way? The look of the consciousness in those eyes. As Joseph Campbell was always very fascinated by the idea of the photo receiving cells. We did not have photo receiving cells for the first 3 billion years of life on Earth. So everything up until that point, moved around with some sensing organ other than being able to see with its eyes. And yet, how are our psyches formed? They're so, Jung calls the psyche the realm of images. It's just this. It's sort of a. I always loved this little thing of the eyes of animals. The eyes of the Creator are full of woe and beauty, without pain or pleasure, and that man needs to behold these eyes in depth in order to understand. Using that consciousness, he sees this as a necessary point of departure. And you can just see the great variety of photo receiving cells in the universe. Now, these actually all here are either birds, fish, or mammals. But think of the ones in the insect world and of other life forms as well. All these photo receiving cells. Well, and the ape is very connected with I just thought this was a beautiful picture with Thoth, Thoth. Now, see, he was not only an ibis, but he was a baboon. You can see his mark over here. He was a baboon, and so he's somewhat related to Mercurius and Hermes. Also, I found in one of my dreams, he's connected with Enoch, who's mentioned in the book of Enoch. He's the Jewish Thoth. Well, anyway, I will go into that a little more deeply next time. But I do want to mention the last dream here. Is this? I thought I would just fly through this stuff. I didn't get. But anyway, we're going to be talking about that a lot of these things, like this right here, seems to be some type of rite or ritual, and it's one of transition. And all rites and rituals, everywhere, are attempts to abolish the separation between the willfulness of ego and the source of life, the unconscious. This is the meaning of every rite and ritual, and it's to bring about a reunion of this caged zoo animal that we all are with our native soil, our ancient, primordial, ancestral background. And so here we have a symbol of revelation and transformation, very different from the fakeness of some of her previous revelation dreams. There's a lot of combination with Hecate, etc. Well, I'm going to move on to just this last dream that I wanted to. Well, here I just want to mention a couple of things. In these dreams, she began to remark that she began to see that she was trying to get in touch, not with some kind of magical thing in a vague outside, but something alive within herself. That's what she felt with this movement, that she's not trying to, in other words, she's realizing that it comes up so much in this one dream that I'll finish with, which I think is so beautiful, is if I can find it, where she is walking along and she is handing coins to someone behind her. and she continues to hand coins to them until she runs out. And then she turns around to see who it is. And it's not a beggar. It's Sybil. Okay. And she's just described it as Michelangelo's Sybil. So this person behind her who she's been giving her small change to is the divine oracle, and she realized that up until this point she's just been giving only intellectual assent to all these images and not her total being, not her everything was so sterile that she was giving these things. It was sterile, it was remote, it was abstract. She said one time that she was always very impressed by the images and the intuitions of other people, but she didn't think hers were worth much. Okay. And what Adler said is that's what the animus tells every woman. Everything you have is this is the lower animus. The lower animus is a naysayer. He's actually very similar to the devouring mother. The devouring mother does not want she wants her son to be very successful, but she also doesn't want him to leave home. And so there's this dichotomy of she is both is both this nurturing great mother, and she is she's the old witch. She's the sinner. She's particularly with the daughter-in-law. Some of the tricks she can play, in the love match between her son and his daughter. Well, the lower animus, and so basically what she's doing is she is crippling his ability to act. Now, what does the lower animus do to the handless maiden? That devil, he cut off her hands. And why did he do that? So that she could not act. And so why does this woman think that her inner images are worthless and don't mean anything? Because she's handless. And who made her handless? The lower animus did, and so now she needs to do what the handless maiden did, is have her most valuable thing, her images, fall in to the creek and be and she now, no one's going to rescue that divine child that fell into the creek but her. And she hears the wise old man. Now he's not the animus, it's the wise old man, and he yells, "Pick up that child." And he's telling her in no uncertain terms that she needs to act. He's not the lower animus. And she says, "I have no hands." He says, "Pick up that child." So she reaches her handless hands into the river, and new hands grow. And then she pulls out the most valuable thing into her, and so that's what she has been doing up until now. Her images have been too sterile. There's been no human connection, no I-thou connection with these images. They're not real. Other people's dreams are real, but not mine. They're just, I just deal with them abstractly. Oh, you mean this is not the angel coming and telling you you're to be the mother of the God? I mean, what would you do if you had that in mind? This is what Jung says, all these images that we deal with. What's the difference between them and an annunciation? Is there a difference? you know, so what's our response to it? He says he says that the biggest resistance in this work, which is, I think, of the one of the zoo animal trying to find its own. Well, I'll just finish with this wonderful story. I know you've heard it, but it's the one of the tiger, the babe that is in the tiger mother dies, and her baby tiger is now being raised by a herd of goats, and so it grows up and with the goats, eats grass, and walks around with the goat herd. And then suddenly this male tiger comes up, and he looks at this tiger and says, "You're living here with these goats?" And he bleats like a goat. So he grabs him by the scruff of the neck. He takes him back to his tiger den and throws this bloody meat in front of him and says, "Here, eat tiger food." And so he takes a bite of it, sort of chokes on it, as we all do, and then he suddenly swallows it, and every cell in his body becomes alive, and he lets out a tiger roar for the first time. And this is what Joseph Campbell says: we're all tigers living among goats. Where do we find our tiger food? It's just I really think that's what's happening here, and I think it's happening. And by the way, let's make sure everybody here, we're the same as her. Our dreams and images, they don't mean anything. Let's read Jung's and see what he had. Oh, they were beautiful. Mine don't mean anything. Well, who's telling you that? It's either apathy, laziness, or we haven't awoken yet. But these are our most precious thing. Well, anyway, I went way over. So Gary, do you want to start a discussion? I'm sorry I didn't get very far.
Yeah, it's just so fascinating because, the whole thing that with Jung was always down and through, and religions are always kind of up and out. And you have this, the spirit versus the soul. And yet that can contrast of spirit versus soul, where, it's not a movement towards some vague magical thing, spirit. It's movement towards something that's alive within yourself. That's the soul work, so
Yeah.
I really like that. Aline, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thank you. That was just wonderful. I get so much out of that, intuitive perception. And so I have a question for the group. I don't understand personality number 2 clearly. You said a few things about it today, Craig, about it being that person in the mirror you don't recognize, or you said, oh yeah, the emergence of our source, but that's the divine child, say, still has the power. And so I was just thinking about, well, there's guides all around us, really, if we have eyes to see them. And is that what is meant by personality number 2? I'm real vague about that.
I can't say I live it, but I would say that Jung's personality number 2 was formed in the Red Book and in Bollingen. That was where that personality developed. He met it first when he was like 11 years old, and he always used to feel people walking behind him, like this woman or this person the woman's giving small coins to, and he eventually realized, the fact that when he was at Bollingen, he would not let anyone come there, where he was, particularly after 4/4 of 44, April 4th of 1944, where he had his near-death experiences, and he was brought back by the the Basileus of Kos, this king of the island of healers, who forfeited his own life by saving his doctor. That he was, Barbara Hanna says he was always in personality number 2. And personality number 2 is one that is sort of is the one who's tending the moon child or something. When he was at Bollingen, he'd tell anyone, if you're going to come, Barbara Hanna was one, that she had to spend a week with someone else at Bollingen before she came to him, because otherwise the stink of Kusnacht, it would infect him. So in other words, he was really living, do you remember the story of the rainmaker, where the Taoist rainmaker comes to a land where they have no rain, and he looks around, sniffs a couple times and frowns, and then he asks to be put into a little hut and be left alone. And it took him 3 days, and after that it not only rained but snowed. Now this really happened. And he gets out and he gets in his little cart. He's going to go back and return to where he was going. And Richard Wilhelm, the guy that wrote translated the I Ching and the Secret of the Golden Flower, says, ask him what happened. He says, where I come from, the land is in sync with the Tao. When I came here, nothing is in sync with the Tao here. All around me is, he didn't say this, but all around me is willfulness and greed. I had to go in to get this air out of my lungs. I had to go into a hut, an introvert for 3 days until I could be in that state. Where it's really the still point, it's the point that we have one foot in a point where nothing injures us. Von Franz called it where you're sitting in the arena observing life. You're a witness. You are neti, I am not this. I hear with my ears, I'm not this. But that you have stepped back, and now you witness the kaleidoscopic life, but you realize that your standpoint is one step removed from it, and it is now the whole thing of developing it is really what we're trying to do. We're trying to develop. Well, let's hear what anyone else has to say. She wanted to ask it of the group. What else would this other people think? What is called personality number 2 is?
Okay, just Gerhard.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kevin.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't describe it as personality number 2, because I don't think it's a personhood as such. But however, how the self is defined, which is a definition of wholeness, which is a combination of animus and anima. And so with logos, one has to understand logos, but with anima, one cannot understand the anima. It has to be through relationship. So in order to connect with the anima, it has to form a relationship to the anima. But who is the self in this? The self is sort of the combination of 2. So what is termed as personality number 2, one has to one way is to connect with it symbolically, because it's a union of the opposites. And so the personality number 2 as such means that one is not only human, but one is connected to sort of what is they call divine. And so in Indian philosophy, that would be Atman, that has connected to Brahman. So the Brahman is the universal consciousness. So Maria Louise von Franz taught personality 2 as the same in everyone. And the same with Edinger. He draws personality or the self as someone everyone shares. But me personally, for me, describing it as personal number 2 is less helpful than to describe it as the essence of all essence.
Mhm.
And one has an individual essence, but one has the essence of all essence.
Mhm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Beautiful, Kevin. Let's go on.
Thank you.
John, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I just find it fascinating. I'm just trying to learn as much as I can, so I don't really think I have that much to relate, but I just find it fascinating, you know. Just every time I come away from one of these sessions, there's more I have to read on the side to catch up. So I like it. I'm learning a lot, but it just makes me realize how much I don't know. So I just like to listen. Thank you.
Great. Diane?
I'd just like to say that I think both Craig and Kevin gave beautiful descriptions of personality number 2. The only thing I would add to that, and Craig already said it, but it's that terminology came up in memories, what is it? Dreams, memories, and reflections. And like he said, personality number 2, Jung recognized as a child. And when you develop it, it's not really a personality anymore, like Kevin was talking about.
Mhm.
But as far as the reading that we're talking about, I think it's really interesting to see the progression of her dreams and how she comes to a place where she can begin to truly individuate, because she hasn't been individuated. She's, you know, limited by her parents still, both of them, and particularly her mother, of course. But I think it's the way she saw things in her own personality. But so it's fascinating to see that, and I can relate to it because now I'm beginning to look at my dreams in a series. So, and it's much more meaningful to do that. It has a lot more to say to you. And so that's what we were talking about yesterday, my dream. Now I've had 3, well, actually more than 3, it's 4 if you can include the one about going back to my mother's homeland. And there's a string of images of horses going through all of that. And I have a few more of those too. So it's interesting to see how to get the chronos of it, you know, not just the linear time, because when you put them all together, you get a much bigger picture, hopefully in the end of mandala. So that's all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Well, let me show real quick. This is every time she closed her eyes, this is what she saw. She saw this metal ring with 4 chains pulling it in 4 directions, and that the ends of the chains went off into infinite space. She didn't know where it ended. That's what every time she closed her eyes, she said she would see that. And then this is 6 weeks later, she starts to see this. She sees, she started to see a crystal. Now the crystal was either a cross or it emitted rays. And as it became more and more vivid, instead of that ring with the 4 wings, everything in its range became illuminated. And eventually this is what became illuminated. Man and woman, or the feminine and the masculine. And now these, neither one are part of her yet, but they've been illuminated by this, what was this, you know, before this thing. Has now become a jewel that instead of being pulled outwards, it is emanating something from within. And that thing that it's emanating within is now illuminating her garden, you know, and allowing her to know what she's discriminating a totality. I mean, it's allowing the radiation from that thing is starting to show her. I would say one of the best ways to think of personality number 2 is that you died and then they resuscitated you, and after you had come back, you knew what it was like to be alive, and you knew what it was like to experience death, and death was not that bad, as what a lot of people say. In fact, they did not want to crawl back in the wet bathing suit. So my doctor, by the way, is one who had a very, you know, powerful, he was definitely dead, and they brought him back to life. And I told him, you know, if I could see auras, I know you have one, you know, and that idea is, he says, well, it informs me in every moment. So he's alive, and yet his center of gravity has shifted. I think that's the whole deal with the personality number 2. You know, Edinger has that graph of ego development, you know, where it kind of comes out, you know, and then the center of gravity is now outside of nature. And then when it comes completely and it's now tangential to nature, it now needs to go back in. And that center of gravity needs to move back towards nature. And as the center of gravity is now more of an absolute balance between the mute wisdom of nature, other than the images that it sends to us, or its pronouncements. Here's the idea. Here's personality number 2. I'm just going to say this and shut up, because this is my sort of it's to become the divine utterance of the depths. When your life has become the divine utterance of the depths, when Jung says that we become a moving tabernacle of not of God, but of nature on earth, we are have achieved that center, that shift of gravity. And I like what Kevin says. I would say it's basically the center has shifted, and the weight is now redistributed in what our priorities. Anyway, so I can move on.
Well, we've had some great descriptions.
Yeah.
Fabio, would you like to go next?
Oh, yes. For me, well, if I think about the work, about the clinical work, I would say personality number 2 would be what's behind the symptom, the physical symptom.
Mhm.
Is what speaks through the symptom.
Mhm.
Who is coming to the office or to the consulting room is the personality number 1.
Right.
And through therapy or treatments, we get to personality number 2. And if we get deeper enough, we go to what Kevin was talking about, something I believe bigger than just a personality, something collective, something bigger. And it's very interesting because during the COVID, we had so many, Craig was talking about the process of sorrow, depression being being important to develop consciousness and maturity. And we see patients like losing father in 1 week, mother in the 2nd week, grandmother in the 3rd week. It was really bad, it was terrible. I was working at hospital at that time. And we see that happening. So we see this process happening in 1, 2 weeks. So the tower, the head, and so we didn't have 20 or 40 years to do that. We had like, 2 years now. So it's incredible how this process of like suffering, sorrow, grief, shortens the development of our maturity and the dialogue, I believe, with this personality number 2. So the dialogue gets better, we get closer. What else I was talking? I was thinking about. Well, and we can see this in her dreams. For instance, we see the space being formed, and she is developing. She is getting better. Let's say somehow the process is happening. Yeah, that's me. That's my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I mean, I love how you have this granularity that you can bring forth. Thank you, Fabio.
Yeah, that was great. Especially the idea that if there is only a really brief time, that through suffering and loss, that it's still possible to reach it. Tim, would you like to go next?
Sure. I really appreciated what Kevin said about personality number 2. It seems to me that it's not as helpful to think about the personality as a noun as it is a perspective. And it seems to me that I think about like a circle on the ground, and your ego inhabits one part on the circle. And of course, as an ego, you kind of move around a little bit. But the personality 2 is like the perspective from the opposite side of the circle, which again moves around in contra motion to yourself, to your ego. And I agree with Kevin that that sense of wholeness is probably collective in character, and we participate in that. Our egos remove us from the collective a certain distance, and so too our personality number 2 removes us to the same degree, kind of. And that's related to another thing that really poked out at me from one of the dreams, when you talk about the bridge that crosses the river. Here are these two, that's this crossroads. And as a person who is on the river pretty often, I tend to look at the bridge underneath as we go under the bridge. And it's a very different experience than seeing the top of the bridge. And of course, I think about what it's like to drive over a bridge, and it's so normal that sometimes you don't even know you're on a bridge. But underneath, there's all of this other stuff. And it makes me think about the shadow. Again, we think of as a noun or a personality. I wonder if there isn't a shadow of the process of movement. I'm developing something in my life, and maybe there's a shadow in the verb of moving forward. And I just want to spend some time thinking about that. Another couple of things that poked out at me were had to do with the eyes of the animal, and this sense that there is woe in that expression. And this is something that has haunted me for a long time. As an artist, I'm looking at beautiful things, and particularly beautiful creatures and people. And oftentimes I will see in the most beautiful faces this sense of woe. And I've always wondered, what is that? Is that actually a component of nature? or is it a component of the projection of my own consciousness? You look at the faces of those primates, and you cannot see that without seeing woe. And of course, the animals themselves might be feeling woe, but I wonder if woe isn't embedded in nature. And as you become more sensitive, you begin to see, oh my God, there is woe everywhere.
Mhm.
In spite of all this incredibly, knock you over the head beauty that is everywhere, there is this rumbling sense of woe.
Yeah, Mother Nature is ashamed of herself. That's why Vasilisa should not ask too many questions. They will make you old. You know what Joseph, what was it they said, that death and killing is not a refutation of the invincible joy of life, of the inexpressible joy of life invincible. And that's what Mother Nature wants us to be concerned with, not her dark side, because it's there, but she's not too proud of it.
Angelique.
One thing that impresses me with Jung having noticed so young, thank you, Craig, today was very rich for me, very many things for me to work on. It really impresses me that he, even younger from when he was able to notice two personalities in him, he was able to watch the two personalities in his mother.
Yes.
I find that fascinating because he could see, he could discriminate between the witch mother, who was coming from the depths and the darkness of the goddess, who was truly a witch, who was able to say to him, your father died in the right time for you.
Yes.
What kind of mother said that? She was clearly dark, feminine. She was impersonating. She was mediumistic, but not just mediumistic like his cousin. She could talk with a very deep voice, which would scare him. And then she had the other personality, the conventional mother, the spouse of a priest. So I think it always amazes me from how young he was able to watch these two personalities in the person who was incarnating the feminine in him, and its dual aspects. And then he was very sharp to notice these two aspects in himself. And so for me, personality number 2 is the connection to the organic, the wild, and the primitive that always shocks us. There's the element of shock. And I think Jung says somewhere, which is something that stands out of time and out of convention. So it's the opposite power of what the civilization is trying to do to us. And I think there are these specific pieces of music that used to be called folias. In the 16th, 17th century, Vivaldi has a lovely folia. And I remember having read an article on folias, and it seems that the word is coming from foliage, the wild leaves, which are dark, which still carry the sap, they very Dionysus inside them. But then that's the word that comes folie, la folie in French, which is madness. So this is personality number 2, is the folias. If you listen to Vivaldi's folia, you hear the music going, reaching a rhythm that is really crazy, not humane. I think you feel that he has sort of downloaded it from a place so wild and so powerful, and so that can so shock human beings. So it couldn't have been invented by a human, but it can really attack a human or possess a human or scare a human the way Jung used to be scared by his mother's darkness. Thank you.
Yeah, you said one time that Jung had a strange relationship with the occult, but you know, his mother and his whole mother's family, including Elaine Price, and all of his aunts, they were all, very occult. I mean, they had this strange relationship, but yeah, that's beautiful. Jung says in the Black Books that he learned that his duty was to unite consciousness with the absurd, and if it wasn't absurd, if it wasn't incomprehensible, then it wasn't real.
Hello, everybody. So a few points. I think personality number 2 is a permeable ego. That's what I think about it. To kind of connect it to the depth of the psyche, the unconscious, and the whole existence. When Fabio was talking, an idea came to my mind that there should be therapists who work with tarot cards in the therapy room. They should do tarot with just interaction with patients, because it brings the unconscious to the table. Tim was asking about the woke look in animals. I think what I see in animals' eyes is some kind of archaic conscious. It's a kind of being awake, but not aware of being awake. I had a boyfriend, and when I would wake up, there was a phase that my eyes was open, but I wasn't moving. It was like, and he called this frozen fish. And he was afraid because I was there, I was just looking and just not there, somewhere in between conscious and unconscious when we can't move. So I think nature in general is an archaic consciousness. And what it's like looking in the mirror. The mirror doesn't have a look, but we project our sense of wonder, which, by the way, I think is the most authentic and original thing that a human can experience, is the sense of wonder. Everything else is unstable, it changes, but at the bottom of everything is this sense of wonder and gazing into these archaic eyes. And the wall, I think it's us projecting our being aware, becoming aware of this archaic consciousness, because beauty is not beauty. It is us who see it as beauty, I think. The other thing was the idea of animals as the inner campus that was very interesting to me. And these 4 directions and the circle in the middle of it, which is solar cross. And I was thinking about the 4 directions and relating them to the elements, which north is air, west is water, south is earth, and east is fire. And in tarot cards, there are also, I was Googling when we were talking. So fire is wands, air is swords, water is cups, and earth is pentacles. And I was also thinking about the 4 functions, if they can be somehow mapped on the 4 directions. I don't know if any of you know about this, or I was thinking maybe thinking is north. I don't know.
Mhm.
Intuition is west. Sensation is probably earth. I don't know.
Mhm.
But I wanna figure out how this 4 functions of ego are related to directions. And anima is the center, is the circle. It's 360 degrees, holistic point of view. But animus is like an arrow
Mhm.
that gives you direction.
Oh.
It's really interesting to think about the animus as this inner guide or
Mhm.
campus. And it's funny how men have issues with asking about address. Like
Yeah.
because male form manifest animus in some cheap or simplest ways. So it's about direction. They think they are the direction, they're the campus, they know the directions. So they don't want to ask about it. You know, it's funny, but it's there. And overall, the dreams and the animal eyes and the cross with water and earth, it was all really, really interesting. And it will be with me for the next week. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to show you real quick. Everyone said that when Jung would get in personality 2, he would look out
Yeah.
of the top of his glasses and he would be looking, they said, at a point that no one else saw. You know, I mean, that was when he, they said it was just eerie to watch him do it.
Can you share this picture later in Facebook or something?
Certainly, yeah. This is actually Jung with Heinrich Zimmer.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, yes. Isn't that you know, several people. The one who mentioned it was that one American that just died, like at 104. I can't remember his name, but he was with Jung since the 1920s, and he was the one that pointed that out. I think we got Ava left here.
Yep,
Thank you,
Ava.
Nazim.
Ava, do you want to go next?
Yes, it's so many things I'm thinking about, but it's interesting this turning point when she will receive the knowledge from a deeper level, and it's important for me. It's important to understand things on a logical, intellectual level too. And you are so good at explaining it, Craig. But it's in sometimes there is a limit where I can't understand because I haven't get that level myself. And I can recognize almost when it happens, because it needs a level of maturity and experience and living through things myself to understand. And there, of course, I'm thinking about Alice in Wonderland, when you describe too small, things are too small, or she is too big, and the story we get in touch with in Camilla's dream about this sweet soap song.
Yes, yes.
It was so complex, but so explaining emotionally for me, very explaining. And the next thing is I happened to look at Jordan B. Peterson again, because I was dreaming about him. I had to look up who it is, and I'm not. Suddenly I saw his daughter making programs on her podcast about the medication he had taken. It was benzoyl, and he was almost killed. To listen to a daughter to him, so and he had taken such pills herself, and it took 8 months, and he had been in Moscow, in clinics in Serbia, and maybe you all know this.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about it's so terrible, this perspective, that this deep Jungian knowledge isn't well known. This kind of development and taking care of feelings, and all the world are filled of these pills of different kind that people are almost forced to take, also in US, because the assurance can't doesn't give money if they don't take those killing pills. It's so I'm so upset about it, and it's like all the climate thing, the poison everywhere, even in our bodies, when we are searching to heal our souls, and it's so terrible. And then, of course, I'm so surprised that so many strong things happens at the same time. This story that Diane, and I'm so thankful. And I think this is a revolutionary thing. Of course, it's not easy, but I admire this man that he was able to tell this story, and to see his move, his strong feelings. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think we got everybody, didn't we? Or yeah.
Yeah, unless Kevin wants any closing comments, because his was sort of a reply.
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll keep going through this. I'll try to go through as efficiently as possible, but I think, you know, Diane talked about the dream series. I think as we see all this dream series, it forms me. You know, I'm learning all kinds of things about my own dreams from Adler, you know, who spent 2 days with Tony Wolff and 2 days with Young, and sometime with Emma Young every week for like 8 years. So this is he's got pretty good pedigree. Well, anyway, thank you, everybody. We'll see you all next time. Appreciate you all. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.